All right, so my name is Kyo Kavada, and I was a producer intern at Zynga for the last few months, and my presentation is going to cover what I did, as well as kind of what Jonathan April, a designer, and Pat Dietz did while they were out there in San Francisco. Both of them are in Washington right now, so they weren't here to make it. So I'll play John's video first. It's fairly short. Pat, in normal fashion, made a 30-minute video. We won't go through the whole thing. I already listened to it. So we'll start off with John's video here.
Hello, my name is Jonathan April, and I just finished my internship as a game designer at Zynga. Working at Zynga was an amazing experience. I got to learn a whole lot, work with veterans from all sorts of different industries, from playing cards to film to obviously video games. It was a really, really cool experience. While working there, I got to work on 3 different projects. One of which was called Dream 2, and it was released the week after the internship finished. So most of my time was spent working on that game, and so that's what I'm probably going to talk about the most. When I was first brought on to Dream 2, I was brought on to help out with the XML. And so being someone that likes to script a lot, I was ecstatic to hear that that's what I would be doing. So there was actually only one person that knew how to do the XML for the game, and so he then taught me how to do all the systems, and the XML was actually used for a lot in the game. So once he handed that over to me, I was kind of in charge of the XML for the rest of the game. And so when I was brought on, the game had already been in development for about 4 or 5 months, and there was about a month and a half left. So I worked on the game for about a month and a half, and I did all sorts of, what was kind of cool is that I got to do some scripting, but also some just normal game design type of things. So with the scripting, I got to work with the art team in integrating new assets, and things like building collision from the tools that some of the programmers gave me, and adding in shadows, and it was really cool. But I also got to do things like help out with tuning for the game, naming different, they're called habitat extensions in the game. So I got to help out with the naming of those, which was kind of fun, more creative side. So it was really cool. I got to do a lot of different things, and the other 2 projects that I worked on are unannounced games, and it was pretty cool working on those 2 because they were the complete opposite spectrum of where they were in development as opposed to Dream 2. So the other 2, it was only me and 2 other designers and then 2 artists working on them. And so what the process was for us to work on these almost pitches for these games, come up with what we game flow, just kind of retention rates, what we thought the game should be like, and then we would pitch it to higher ups in the company. And so what they would do is they would look at it and say, okay, we really like the direction that you're going on here, and here's some things that we think you should add, and we would continue to advise those. Once we got it to a point that they liked, they would greenlight it and then put an entire team on it. So as I said, it was really cool to work on games that are in these 2 completely different times of their development. One of the cool things about working at Zynga is that I heard that working on social games, the development cycle is much shorter than that of PC or normal console games, and it didn't really hit me until I got there and saw how fast things can change and how things are iterated. And we talk about that. We talk about that in FIEA classes and everything, but it's probably faster than you would think. So just be warned and be ready for that if you plan on getting into social games. One thing that's really cool about working on the mobile side of Zynga was that I was able to work on iPhone and iPad games, and so being that I worked on a game that has now been released, it's pretty awesome because I can, then go into possible employers or even just over to friends' houses, and I can say, hey, pull out your iPhone and download this game, and this is something that I worked on. And look, I did this, and this, and you can just show them right there. And that's something that's really invaluable, and it helps a lot with showing people what you're capable of. One thing that's really cool about working for a big company like Zynga, that you have people from all walks of life that worked there, that had different experiences, and In some ways, it kind of reminded me of FIEA in the way that you had people that have done, come from all different schools and come together to build these projects. And so it was really cool to kind of walk around and see where different people were from and use those experiences to build these games. And I think that was an extremely positive thing. All in all, working at Zynga was a really good experience. I think I really learned a lot, and the things I learned from working there, I'm definitely going to be able to use as I continue on with my career. So thank you very much.
All right, so now we'll hear from Pat. Like I said again, the video was a little bit longer, so I'll probably stop and pause it and probably explain a little bit where some of the crossovers we had between our jobs. We didn't work on the same teams, but I kind of want to get this moving along for everybody's sake.
I'm a producer from FIEA, cohort 7, and I spent the last few months as a design intern on a big product at Zynga. I can't tell you which product because it's unannounced, but it is a big release for the next year, and I got to work with some really big designers, a huge team, lots of product managers, got to interact with the leadership a bit. So it was a good experience, and I'm here to tell you a little bit about that. So let's jump right into that. So Zynga, I think most of you know, is the place that gives us poker, Mafia Wars, Farmville, Cityville. You've heard this all before. Castleville. And that's Mark Pincus. He is the CEO / corporate cheerleader for Zynga. And he's got, kind of an interesting guy. He's involved with the products a lot. He comes down and you see him at lunch, you see him at the happy hours. Yeah, we have a lot of those. And it's after his dog, Zynga, that the company is named. That's where we work. That's 650 Townsend. That's the new corporate headquarters for Zynga. It's really an amazing joint. We have a really cool view right there near the city, so you'll see that's the bay, and that's Zynga. Awesome view from the rooftop. Usually what we see though is inside, and lots of pods and cafes and stuff. So when you do come into Zynga, that's what you see. Yeah, lots of fun stuff.
So I just want to pause it here real quick. So this is the entrance to the new 650 Townsend building, and this light tunnel here is actually Kinect controlled. So our developers could actually go into there and write games or write code so that when you walk through it would react to you, which is really cool. Some of the kids from Viking, they actually got to tour it and they can attest to it. It was actually really cool, but it was a little awkward because every morning you had to walk through it and then you'd like have a seizure right there on your way to work.
Press likes to come in. That's the cafe area where everybody gets food. Chefs cook us meals, all that stuff. So it's a really it's a cool, fun place to work. And if you look up in that room, you'll see this. Press took this photo. This is a photo op we did a few months ago. All of the FIEA interns are in that picture somewhere, I'm pretty sure. It's a cool place to work, neat building, cool corporate culture. In general, Zynga looks at itself as a service offering like Google or Facebook more than it does a gaming company. And you might not like that, but it's their model, and there are some benefits there, which I'll get into in a bit. The boring stuff now, some social gaming basics. Where does all the revenue, where this huge boom, getting away from console gaming into out of traditional gaming and into social gaming, where does all that revenue come from? You probably know that it comes from these pinches. If you've ever played one of these games, one of the major ways we generate revenue is through these pinches of energy, time, social. I mean, it all comes down to time or social eventually, and you can monetize on that. People will pay for more, a very small amount. About 5% of the people that play Zynga games will actually pay for either these new pinches, or these limited editions. These are things like Gagaville. Lady Gaga came to Farmville. These limited editions, the seasonals and things like that, they actually generate a lot of money. The people that do pay like to get those things, like to show them off to their friends. And of course, virality. That's the other form of currency in social gaming. It just is. How is virality money? The more people we have playing, the greater that 5% becomes, and the greater profits you make. So that incredible virality is what helps us get there. But that's not going to drive all of your gaming. You still need a good game behind that. Virality will get gamers' eyes on it, but it will not retain them. So here are our lexiconologistics. That are terms. I made up a word because that's what everybody does. A lot of these terms come out of business school. Some of them have different meanings in the gaming industry, especially in the social gaming industry. So here just is certainly not comprehensive, but here are a few of the terms you gotta get used to.
So we've heard this like 3 times today about DAU, MAU. I'm gonna go ahead and kind of skip forward through this a little bit. DAU, of course, daily, and M being MAU. So let's move forward.
Sounds more complicated than it is. A minimum viable product is the very basic product you can ship with, or in our case, launch with. That is the minimum the product state the product can be in before you put it out the doors. And then minimum competitive product, well, that's where you'd like it to be. That is what you think it needs to be beat the competition. These are both nebulous kind of vague terms, but the business school people, the PMs, which we'll talk about in a second, they are the ones that turn the numbers and tell us whether we're on track to meet those minimum viable or minimum competitive product numbers.
So I just want to touch base back on those 2 terms, MVP and MCP. Those are huge terms around Zynga. MVP being the minimum viable product. So when I get to speaking about the product that I actually worked on, we had to deal with a lot of kind of an MVP decision, whether or not to launch a game with or without certain features. Just to get it out there, get people playing it, let's get some feedback, and then let's figure out, where we need to go on the roadmap. And then, MCP is minimum competitive product. As many of you know, Zynga's known for doing a lot of fast follows, where if they see a successful product on the market, they will actually fast track a game to try to get up and to compete with it. And so in doing that, what they'll do is they'll kind of forego this MVP and become an MCP. So there's several products in the pipeline that I can't really talk about right now, but Zynga has a lot of these MCPs in the work, and you should actually be seeing a few of them being released soon to kind of compete with what's out there.
A little bit about designing social games in general. They're a big deal in social games. So first one you have to get familiar with is the core loops. It doesn't get more simple than Farmville. Core loop in Farmville is plow, seed, harvest, buy. You can deco, you can buy, you can do all of these things. But at the heart of Farmville is this loop. You harvest, you get coins, you buy more. Now, games now have designers. Back when Farmville was made, designing was kind of a new thing, and now it still feels fairly new. But the games are getting more involved. You can see me with the Sim Social or some of the newer Zynga games, that there is more design thought put into these games than plow, seed, harvest, buy. But nonetheless, simplicity is the name of the game in design for social games. And that's what Smart Depth is about, we'll get into that. But this is the core to understanding social games. There's another loop from, I think, something called Smart Town, or it's a Cityville-like game. It really drives high.
Sorry, just to speed up something. So he briefly talked about PPH, or plow, plant, harvest. That's the major core loop that you'll see in most games like Farmville. What a lot of games that Zynga are coming out with now kind of really started with Empires and Allies was this invest and express idea, where basically you invest in building, you plant it, and then neighbors or friends actually come onto your property and usually express the product. So they'll either speed up the time of the harvest, or they'll speed up the time of the building. So you'll see a lot of games coming out in the future that kind of are trending towards there. And then down here, when you're designing, especially at Zynga, there's a lot of considerations that have to be made, especially because, working in a Flash environment, there are some limitations that you can do and can't do because of that. We'll go ahead.
Yeah, sadly, that actually takes some time to navigate through in itself. So the product managers all went to business school. One of the guys on my team went to there are a lot. Possibly Zynga games used to do it or what have you by create and watching numbers and tracking trends and that sort of thing. And so the idea is that now that designers are part of this process and designers are really controlling the creative end of the game, the PMs are very involved in the design process. They sit in on meetings. They have actual input. When we write up a spec, they will review it and provide input into expected outcomes, both financially, virally. They'll tell you what they think works and what doesn't. The PMs have a lot of input at Zynga. In management, like I said, Mark Pincus and the other members of the C staff, Stephen Chang, those guys come down and they talk to our leadership all the time. They're heavily engaged in the product. They see it as a service industry. Pincus has said many times he loves to play Minecraft, and he's looking for ways to improve the games too. They don't always approach it in the way that a designer would. That's why we're there. Like I said, it's not a design-driven culture. If you're a creative designer type of person, there are a lot of opportunities there. My roles on the team, technically, I was there for implementing assets. Luke Gamble also did a lot of this. Probably have heard from him. We were on the same team. So we were stuffing items and assets and other things for our market or what have you into the game by creating these files and pushing them through a file management software. So that means you put the content together and you push it and the game builds on an auto-building server across the room. That game was, that was a big part of my job. That was sort of the grunt work of doing the job. They needed someone to do it. I'm an intern, there you go. Interfacing with engineering, sort of part of that last thing. I got to know all the engineers really well because some of the grunt work was hammering out why certain assets weren't getting in, why certain things weren't going to this pod or that pod, doing the sort of heavy lifting that a lot of the senior designers didn't have time to deal with at the time. So creativeness. They really did make me part of the process. I sat in on every design meeting that I could possibly be a part of. I designed specs, one pages and docs. So as a designer, you probably are familiar with one pages. We have a template on this team for putting one pages together. And that's really, unlike the one pagers you might see a lot of the time, the posters. In this case, the one pager is a really quick high level summary of a concept that we then take into a review. And if the leads like it, then we take it into a spec phase, write up a really detailed spec, including numbers and everything else, how long it would take to produce, what kind of engineering manpower we need, that sort of thing. And you write design docs for it, and then it goes into production. So there's a very long and very bureaucratic process behind it, but it's effective, eventually. Research, play games, take notes. You're going to play a lot of social games if you want to work at Zynga. It's part of the nature of the beast. That said, is it really that bad to sit at work all day when they're paying you and play games? It's really not. So I played a lot of games while I was at work, which is pretty awesome. So track trends. That's going along with what are people doing elsewise in social gaming? What's our competition doing? What are we getting away from? For instance, Zynga games used to use what we call dubers, which are these things that bounce on the ground whenever you harvest something. Those in Zynga are called dubers. But now they're called hoovers because they don't have to click on them anymore. You hover your mouse over them, that's hoovering. So you won't find a Zynga game now that's coming out recently or has come out recently or is coming out soon that doesn't involve hoovering instead of dubering. I know that makes a ton of sense. And then metrics, we talked about that. PMs track it, they track everything. Metrics are heavily influenced. Don't do as much of that as the PMs do, since we have people that do that specifically, but it's still pretty important for designers to stay on top of those numbers, especially if it's about a system you're designing. You want to be prepared for that kind of thing.
All right, so a lot of stuff that he would be talking about here, I'm going to cover in my section of the presentation, so we will move along. Sort of just to kind of break the ice here, who's been paying attention? I actually have some limited edition shirts here that you won't get anywhere else, and so I've gotten these for giveaways. So I need somebody to tell me what both MVP and MCP stand for. Ron.
MVP is the minimum viable product, and MCP is the minimum competitive product.
No, don't give it. That ain't, you know.
Hey. All right, eat it.
Curry in favor.
Hopefully you guys did not see that last slide too much. But all right, so well, what did I do out there? I mean, I've shown 2 videos, but I haven't really talked about what exactly I worked on while I was out there. So I got to Zynga, first day, met my managers, and they're like, congratulations, you are the brand new member of a team which you are the only member on. Great. No mentors, nobody to kind of like piggyback off of. What do I do? So luckily I got to work with the COO of Farmville, Matt Manuel. He's done several games. He actually was at LucasArts for quite a while. Moved over to Zynga, and he kind of did a lot of like team health and management of the whole Farmville franchise, including the game that Pat and Luke worked on, as well as the game that I worked on, which was called Farmville Express. And what it was is this actually came out from what we call a hackathon, and what they'll do is Zynga every quarter or so, they will actually do a hackathon where they will take a segment of about 3 days, kind of shut down development on games, and just let people create. And these can be teams as small as like 3 to teams as large as 12 to 15. And what these teams do is they look at all the existing games, they pick a feature or something that just quite doesn't work right, and just lets them improve it or create something brand new. And so during one of these hackathons, somebody wanted a controller app. So if you're at work, can't access Facebook, can't get on Farmville, but you got crops that are withering. How am I supposed to keep going with my farm? Well, you could be smart and plant crops that won't wither while you're there. Or you could have used this app that they created, and what they wanted to do is they wanted to allow kind of like these hardcore addicts to be able to just on the go, very simply do some core functionality, which was the plow, plant, harvest loop, so you can plow, plant, reharvest your crops, send and receive neighbor requests, and then send and receive gift requests. So when we were talking about MVP earlier, this is kind of what the product launched with PPH, neighbor requests, and gifting. Towards the end of my internship, we actually, the Wednesday before the internship ended, we pushed a huge content push with a lot of feedback from users, mainly focused around the order in which the app was presented. When we launched it, the message center sort of thing was on the top, and the crops were at the bottom. Well, people weren't really using the messages and gifts that much, and they really wanted to just kind of get in there and get their crops planted. So we actually ran some experiments and tested, and got some really good data that said, hey, you know what, people like and respond more to the app, when this harvest mechanic is placed at the top of the app rather than the bottom. So along with it, it was really different because we didn't dictate when we launched. We actually had to, we had signed agreements with Facebook that we would launch alongside of Spartan. And so when I got there originally, my first day of the internship, they said, all right, you're pulling this project from mobile and it's launching in 2 weeks. You've got yourself, and we're going to hire 3 more developers that will be here on next week. And you'll have to get them ramped up on the product, fix any bugs, and then launch it. I'm like, okay. So we ended up getting another intern programmer, a new grad programmer, and a full-time programmer that had some Android experience. So that was good. So we got the product, got working. About 3 days away, we had been crunching hard. We get an email from Facebook saying, hold the phone, we're delaying for 2 weeks. So now we had worked all this hard time, and we're like, okay, well now we've got 2 more weeks. What can we fit in? Worked again the 2 more weeks. Actually added a product manager, which is kind of like an analytics-based designer. So Pat did a creative design, and another guy on the team named Brian Cars that worked on my team was a product manager. What they do is they look at all the stats, analyze it, and create features based off of those statistics. So earlier, like I said, switching the module is kind of what that change was based off of. So the 2 weeks came up, Spartan's ready to launch. They're right about to have the F8 big conference, and they say, we're not ready with Spartan. So now we had crunched a whole nother time, got our build perfect the way we wanted it, no launch. So we waited a total of about 8 weeks after I got initially on the product before the product did actually launch along Spartan. And it was awesome that I got to kind of see that whole process from start to finish. So one of the main things I wanted to talk about that really I kind of learned while I was there is the release cycle of Zynga. As you know, most of the games are live, and so working on a live game is completely different than shipping a boxed product. Since it's live, we're constantly pushing code. Farmville actually pushes code anywhere between 4 to 5 times a day. With a major push usually going out in the morning, hot fixes in the afternoon, and then if there's space available, they'll push it later that evening around 7 or 8 o'clock so that they don't have to come in super early and do it. So what this kind of symbolizes is the way that if you can kind of visualize the release cycle of a particular release, this is how it works. So if you look in the middle of trunk represents kind of like the core code. It's like the cleanest code. It's what's live, it's what's out in production. And basically the way the release cycle starts is first a separate branch is cut from trunk. And it kind of becomes a dev branch. So developers work in there, designers work in there, QA works from there. This is where all the features of a specific pod, whether it's revenue or expansion, kind of starts here. So basically, this is, I guess you could almost consider alpha. So alpha testing is done here, and once we get verification that everything is good and there's no major show-stopping bugs, it goes from what we call stage to prod stage. I should have explained this earlier. So there's 3 kind of stages. There's stage, prod stage, and production. Production is actually live. What if you went and played the game right now, you would see. So now we've got the verification that everything's good. We go into prod stage. Now there's still no development going on here, but there's a little bit more testing going on, because what happens is as soon as we hit prod stage, everything gets merged back into trunk, and this is a and then right here, a release candidate is cut. So all the code that was clean here, merged back into trunk, and a new branch is cut. We do another quick little test to make sure that nothing new introduced by going into trunk is introduced and breaks our code. Everything looks good, perfect. We go into production. So right as soon as we go into production, so after everything's clear in production, we go to prod stage, we go into production, and then once production's done, we sync back with trunk, and then the whole cycle repeats itself. Now imagine this, but there being 3 of these diagonal lines across it, because there's not only a revenue pod, there's expansion, limited edition stuff. So like there's all these branches going all around at the same time, but it gets really confusing really quickly if you're not paying attention and staying on top of it. So now the way the feature flows work, especially on our game, is we explained earlier, the PMs based off of statistics create a spec. They get approvals. We have a big kickoff meeting with all the major stakeholders. So we get devs in there for time estimates. We get QA in there for any questions so they can create the test plans. You get producers in there to kind of say, hey, we can do this in this time, or we don't have time to kind of focus this on right now. We need to kind of shelve it and come back to it in a couple weeks. After that, production kind of assigns the subtasks out to all the developers. In my case, I didn't do a whole lot of that because towards the end of the product, we actually brought in another senior producer that I had to train up, and he actually became the person I reported to. So he handled most of that. I handled mostly the QA and kind of release management stuff. So after the devs complete the tasks and get the feature built, it goes into beta test, like I said, which is the stage segment, and then the feature is released through the pipeline. So we're going to play a little game here. I know I had this up earlier, but I got 2 more shirts here. So the first one I want to give out is how many of the top 10 games right now on Facebook are Zynga games? Alex?
7?
No. Alan?
6.
All right. I'll take 2 more guesses, but you got 6, so.
I'll go
4?
7.
So, no, we already got, no, it's up. So 4, 6, who wants 5?
8.
I'll take 5.
Tom's got 5.
All right, next one.
All right. So Cityville right now is the current #1 game on Facebook, followed by Castleville, Farmville, Texas Hold'em Poker, and the Sim Social. Interesting note, when I started the internship, Sim Social was #2, and Zynga was not happy about that. So good job, guys. Going on, Words with Friends, Empires and Allies. So we're at 6. Bejeweled Blitz, Diamond Dash, and Tetris Battle. So who had 6? All right, and then just some quick numbers here. This is kind of current DAU based off of stats that I got today. So as you can see, Castleville is actually new to Zynga. It was recently launched about a month ago, and it's already surpassed Farmville in DAU, which is huge. If you notice, you don't see a game up there that launched prior to that, which was Mafia Wars 2, which was expected to do really well, and it quite hasn't performed up to expectations. So yeah, last but not least, I have one last shirt, which is actually from Castleville. So basically, I'm going to give this one to Tom because
Isn't that nice?
he wants one so bad. And if anybody else has any questions or any comments, we'll wrap it up.
So how do you guys handle your own flooding your own? As long as you got top 10.